What's going on? My name is Psyche and welcome to Dead Cells 2.4. This will be the first build that I'm gonna do featuring items from the new patch. And this time around I'm gonna be featuring something that was recently buffed. Now this weapon, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, used to be pretty mediocre because it was not that good to begin with and suffered a lot in the early game. However, I can safely assure that in this patch, this item has received a very significant nerf and is very viable now. And of course I'm talking about magic missiles. It boasts being one of the fastest weapons in the game, and you can hold it down for some rapid fire. And on top of that, it auto-targets enemies. So I guess how they wanted to balance it was that to make it not very powerful since it kinda just does everything for you. But it was kind of in a spot where it was so weak that nobody played it. Anyways, I know this item warranted a buff and the devs delivered. And today I just wanted to see how powerful it is now compared to before. One of the major problems with magic missiles is that it lacked early game damage, because it was just such a chore to kind of go around and kill enemies in the first couple of biomes because it just took too long. But now, as you can see, this is no longer the case. I originally wanted to play this build with Boomerang, but unfortunately I wasn't able to find it in this run, so I am gonna have to stick to something else as a support weapon. Now, something to note about my showcase runs moving forward, I'm going to play these runs assuming that I will not be able to dual bind, because according to the devs, they are going to remove it eventually, so I might as well just play it safe and do what they want and just not dual bind anything. I definitely think this past update has been subject to a lot of criticism in the sense that dual binding was something that the players found out themselves, and it kind of feels a bit unfair that the devs are taking it from us. Now, at the end of the day, whether or not you dual bind is your business. It's kind of like using console commands in Skyrim. It doesn't really affect anyone except for you, just like any type of single player games. That being said, if this is how the devs want the game to be experienced, then sure, I'll go along with it. Hence why I don't plan on dual binding any more builds from now on. However, I do think that some weapons in the game should probably be reworked if they're going to remove dual binding, such as throwing knife, because it's kind of too fast in my opinion, and it's really only useful when you dual bind it because you can maximize its DPS. But now you toss it out, it does some damage, and then that's it. You gotta switch back to your main weapon, and the second slot it's just kind of sitting there, where the throwing knife has a cooldown. But if it was dual binded, then you could throw it constantly, which would proc bleeding damage. And I do think this is what makes the throwing knife a very, very integral part of tactics. Now, some of you have been saying if I'm going to redo my tier lists for 2.4, and to answer that question, yes, I am going to redo tier lists for version 2.4 of the game. I don't know when that's going to come out. I can already safely assure you that a lot of the items tiers have been changed, as I have been experimenting with a bunch of these weapons. Some of these changes were really unexpected in the sense that I never thought any of them would see the light of day. But actually though, I've been having a lot of fun with items I've never used before, and I would encourage everyone else to do the same. For example, try out Boomerang, try out the War Spear. These were seen to be very mediocre weapons, but now they're actually really decent. Now, obviously, some builds in the game will just be straight up better than others, but you can't really balance the game so that every single item is the same level of viability as everything else. It's just not doable. But you can kind of get close to that middle point, where the game is hard enough that you will try to experiment with different items until you find that sweet spot. Speaking of which, I go to Prison Depths, and I pick up a exploding decoy. Now, I believe I rated the decoy an A tier on my 2.1 tier list, and from what I've seen, I could not be more wrong about that. The truth is though, when I did those tier lists at 2.1, I was still at the beginning stages of my channel, and I actually didn't know too much about the game back then, so I kinda just rated everything based on my instinct. And on top of that, as you can probably tell by now, those videos were pretty outdated, especially in the way that I present that information. I just kind of have a monotone voice in real life, and I can't really do anything about it. I can assure you guys, when I finally do the tier list of version 2.4, I'm gonna be much more enthusiastic and more knowledgeable about the game. Now, for some reason, my melee tier list has amassed over 100,000 views. I don't know why that's the case. I really don't think that was a good video to begin with. I actually think There were a lot of things I could have done better. The truth is that used to be one of the earliest videos I've done, and I knew that kind of video was going to be popular. Because let's be honest here, people just like to rate things, and I knew a tier list type of video was going to get views. In fact, that was the first video on my channel that got over 1,000 views within like a week. And the truth is though, I'm not sure if my channel would have ever taken off if that video didn't get big. So I guess in some cases I do have to thank that video for what it is, though right now at this point I am not too proud of it. There were a lot of editing mistakes I had, and I could have done a lot more research to justify my choices. Speaking of views, I also had this first showcase video featuring the katana. It's definitely not one of my best videos, but for some reason it's my most viewed showcase video on this channel, which again, I really have no idea why. And here against this giant tick monster, as you can see, the decoy actually did something, and it actually killed it off for me. So very, very unexpected. I don't think the decoy is very good because it's just based on RNG whether or not monsters will actually get lured to it. But anyways, the katana video, there was one point on my channel where that video was the lowest viewed video on the entire channel. I believe when the tier list, the melee tier list had 1,000 views, that video only had like 90 views. Yeah, 90. And while I can appreciate people clicking on that now and watching it for what it is, it's just not one of my proudest videos out there. Now that I think about it, none of my earliest videos are. So far, I've been doing extremely well actually for this biome. Okay, never mind. As soon as I said that, I just took a bunch of damage. But in the second biome, the Arboretum, I actually managed to no-hit the entire biome. So you don't really see that very often. Getting the guaranteed curse chest from Morass with the Banished now, this is definitely one of the easier curses in the game in my opinion, but you do have to remember to save enough enemies in order to actually lift the curse. But just like all curses, go slow and you should be fine. Thinking back on a lot of my older guides, especially like the curses guide or the synergy guide, I definitely think there are a lot of things I could have done better, and I've seen some suggestions that I should remake them. Maybe that'll come in the future, but I'm not so sure. Though speaking of guides, I do have a Malaise guide coming out in this week or next week. I already have it edited, and it should be unlisted on YouTube. I'm just waiting for it to be published. If you're wondering why I'm not publishing it now, because I tend to publish videos once a week, as you probably have noticed by now. It's not that I don't have enough time or anything, I'm just kind of too lazy. Now, burnout is the one thing I want to avoid on my channel because I think that will eventually lead to lesser enjoyment of me making them. I do enjoy playing Dead Cells still, I do enjoy making content for it still. It's just that I need to space out the content so I don't get too overwhelmed. Because I'm still a one-man army. I don't have any editors working for me or anything. The final guide I plan to do for Dead Cells is probably going to be a boss guide or the parrying guide. I'm not sure which one I'm going to do, but I can safely say once I complete those guides, I will be done putting out guides for the game. So I guess part of me is relieved that's happening, but part of me is kind of sad. I don't know, hopefully the game will give me some new content to work with, but in the meantime, that's going to be it for guides. Going into Fight Mama Tick now. Now I knew that having Firebrand in my inventory was not very good considering it just doesn't work since the whole arena is covered in water, but I just did what I could. I thought that I would have been able to replace it in the shop, but none of the items just really interested me. And on top of that, the magic missiles actually has burning synergy as an affix, so I couldn't really get rid of the Firebrand right now, so I just had to tough it out and get it done with in this boss fight. There's always a certain type of risk when entering the Mama Tick fight without a shield because it's possible that two sides just rise up right after one another and there's no timing for you to actually dodge it, so you just have to take a hit. Though luckily that didn't happen with me. I'm not sure if it's luck-based or there's a way to control where the sides wind up, but I was actually able to no-hit Mama Tick. Thanks to No Mercy, of course. I'm gonna move on to the Fractured Shrines because I wanted to fight Scarecrow. Gotta shake things up. I can't just go to the giant every single run. I'm sure myself, of course, as well as you guys, will find that to be boring. And I wanted to see some of the newer structures in Fractured Shrines, as you kind of saw in the background there. Also, a heavy warning for you guys. Don't go into the distillery right now. It's just very, very challenging. There were a lot of new traps when I went there off camera, and I would just, if you're gonna go there, at least take Masochist. That's my recommendation. There are a lot of new traps, and some of those traps are actually extremely challenging. It almost feels like Distillery is a brand new biome again. I used to prefer Distillery over High Peak Castle because I didn't have to deal with the Royal Guards, but unfortunately now there are a lot of traps that you gotta deal with, and a lot of it just feels kind of unfair, though I'm sure I just have to get used to it before I'll start liking it again. I managed to lift the curse in the Fractured Shrine, so I guess that's good. And this Guardian monster thing, I actually didn't know he had a chain attack, and I actually got hit by that. I think that was the first time I've seen it actually. But by this point, I couldn't really do anything except for moving forward with my magic missiles and Firebrand, just as I had before. I do think that I would have preferred to dual bind Firebrand, but like I said before, I'm done with dual binding. If that's how the game devs want me to play the game, I guess I'll play along. One other thing I was looking forward to was the nerf of Barbed Tips. That item just straight up breaks the game. I haven't yet tried it out in the new patch, but if anyone has, let me know if it's actually nerfed now or if it's still busted just as before. Going through my list of builds that I actually want to play, I have an Impaler build with Assault Shield coming up. I have a Boomerang Showcase build. The Boomerang is actually very powerful now. If you haven't tried it out before, definitely do so now, because you'll find that it basically melts through everything in the game actually. Though just gonna ignore my mistakes there as I take a huge chunk of damage, but fortunately I was able to get some rally back. Some other builds I wanted to try out, just throwing some random ones out there. I'm thinking of trying out Assassin's Dagger. I'm thinking of trying out War Spear because that used to be one of the worst items in the game, but now I actually think it's kind of decent. Even if you don't pull off the critical hit, it still does pretty good damage. There are also some items I want to showcase that I've never done before, but it didn't really get changed in the 2.4 patch, such as the Scythe Claws, the Heavy Crossbow, the Ice Crossbow. I think a lot of the crossbows, actually all of the crossbows, are very good, and they all serve a very distinctive purpose. If you're wondering by this point of the run why I have so much money, that's because I just never found anything to replace my weapons with. They're all just kind of bad. I guess that's one of the bad things about playing on normal mode, is that you don't really have a lot of control over your build. Though recently I've been contemplating about whether or not I should use custom mode to showcase the weapons. And by this point, I think a lot of my options are dwindling down, so I think at some video, I'm actually gonna use custom mode to showcase the items, though I am gonna try to restrict as little items as possible. Speaking of which, going into the Scarecrow fight. Now, I think this fight is probably the most frantic fight out of the 3-second bosses. There's a lot of time where you just feel like you're gonna get hit. Just like a moment that you'll see here where a mushroom almost fell on my head and I thought for sure I would take damage, but for some reason I didn't. I think the hitboxes in this fight are kind of wonky at times. I've tried to test some parrying with this boss off camera, and I find that a lot of the times I try to parry it, the timing is very inconsistent. But we'll have to see how it goes, and I actually managed no-hit Scarecrow, which I did not expect. Gonna go to the next level, namely High Peak Castle now, like I said before. For the time being, I'm just gonna avoid Distillery like the plague, because I don't think it's worth going there anymore. The traps are just way too deadly for me to handle. I might actually do a video showing you guys how I can dodge the traps in Distillery, but we'll have to see. Anyways, I've had some discussion about the giant fight for a pretty long time now, and I really think that the game shouldn't reward you that much for going to the giant, because at the moment, if you go to the giant, you get to skip High Peak Castle, which is potentially saving you some potion flasks. And on top of that, going to giant gives you the most amount of scroll fragments. And here I actually see a curse chest in High Peak Castle, which if you didn't know has a 5% chance of spawning. I don't see it here very often, but I'm going to take it because, well, why not? It's just sitting there. Though this is a very dangerous biome to be in. I would not want to mess up anything here, and as you can see, I am gonna actually have to go and fight an elite rampager. But fortunately, just drop off my skills and it's dead in no time. Magic Missiles is really packing a punch here, but I'm gonna go to the shop, try to see if anything's worth my time, and just as always, luck doesn't seem to be in my favor today. So I just carry on with the curse, dodging when I need to, and that was a very close call there actually. Well, a couple of close calls now that I look at it. Definitely not a good place to be in, but might as well just tough it out and try to lift the curse. If you're wondering why I'm speeding up the video so much, it's because I have a lot of downtime. And I just want to be really careful when picking out my monsters. I really think they should either decrease the amount of rewards you get for fighting Giant, or increase the amount of rewards that you get for going to High Peak Castle or Distillery. Because right now there's just too many incentives to go to the Giant. It's just too good for your run. Maybe if they added like a food shop here or something, that might make it more worthwhile. But this is probably one of the hardest biomes in the game. And on top of that, there are not a lot of resources here. But even now, I haven't yet lifted my curse. I just want to be really careful. And with this Royal Guard, just gonna wait for it to teleport and do my thing. Luckily, drop down the cleaver and it's just dead. I just have one more curse to lift. And this big boy is gonna do it for me. Just gonna wait for the tornado. I don't want to take any chances here. But finally, there is the curse. I move on and try to get the other 2 keys I need. By this point, I literally have 60,000 gold on me, which I don't see very often. For some reason, the shops I try to refresh just really weren't in my favor today. They just don't want to show me the good stuff. But there's nothing I can really do about that, I guess. And like I said before, I don't think custom mode is cheating. It's been stated by the devs that it's not cheating, so I think if you wanted to use it, definitely go for it. I do think I will be taking advantage of it in the near future. I didn't want to move on with the biome yet because I knew that an enemy will eventually drop a piece of food, and of course I was rewarded, and I actually managed to heal up to 100%. So here we are, the moment of truth, gonna go fight Hand of the King. Can magic missiles hold up against this boss? Well, let's just take a look. Gonna drop down my turrets and anger the owl as always. Just keep hammering the Hand of the King. This is one fight you really don't want to stay a very long time in. But luckily, just after 1 or 2 attacks, I was able to summon the enemies, and Hand of the King moves on to his second phase. Again, the flags, that's a really good sign. The flags is an attack that you just really don't have to worry too much about, and this is something I will state in my boss guide, which I know that a lot of people are struggling with Hand of the King right now, which is understandable. But finally, I was able to get a no-hit with the magic missiles. So I guess it really goes to show that, as you can see, the magic missiles, definitely something to be reckoned with. Finally, move on to the last biome of the game, Astrolabs. I've had a few requests on me doing a biome guide here, but honestly, I think there isn't too much to talk about. Just avoid the lasers, you got the new librarian monsters to worry about, you got like a new puzzle with the Sonic Carbine blueprint, and I think part of that is manageable as long as you get the Masochist mutation. Fight the first elite, kill it easily as you can see here. One other thing I've noticed in a lot of my older videos is that a lot of my thumbnails are really saturated. The reason for this is because I just turned the saturation all the way up with a new layer on top of the actual thumbnail. Because I thought making the thumbnail more colorful will make people click on it more, but I don't think that's the case. I'm definitely going to be more careful with my color selection from now on. I actually think some of the more desaturated colors look a lot better, but again, I'm no art student, I'm no expert on motion or graphic design. Everything I learned about making thumbnails and videos, I just learned online. But here was the moment I was waiting for. I finally get to the food shop. There's something about not having a full flask that kind of worries me sometimes, but luckily that's not going to happen anymore as I finally used the huge amount of fortunes that I had to purchase a flask recharge. And here I actually get lucky and get a dual stat scroll that actually has tactics, which brings my total amount of stats to 33. I think I've said this one time before, but the run that I had the most amount of stats in was my Spite Sword video, where I had 37. And I really don't think I'm gonna get that lucky again. I didn't even find a single challenge rift in this run, but I'm gonna purchase some leftover food and go to fight the collector. Now here I find a knockback shield behind the 60 kill door, and since I heard that it's been buffed and I feel a lot safer in this fight with the shield, I thought, well, might as well try it out and see how it goes. Go on to meet the collector, and we're going to begin the fight, after he sucks out all my cells, of course. I wish there was some way you could actually use it in 5BC once you got all the blueprints. As strange as it may seem for me to say it, I actually think the game might need more cosmetics because it just kind of feels bad after you've accumulated like 800 cells just for the collector to suck it out of you. I try using the knockback shield, but honestly, I don't think it's doing too much. It would have been pretty cool if it knocked the collector across the room, but I just don't think it's that good. Though honestly, all I want for a shield is for it to parry. If I had the old wooden shield at this point, I would have still been fine. Of course, by some point, I don't know when, but I repicked my mutations, and I picked up Astrolab, which makes use of the Hokuto's bow in my backpack. Now, Hokuto's bow may be nerfed, but I actually think it's still pretty good because most of the times when you're using it, you're just putting it in the backpack. So it's basically free damage if you think about it. Collector does this outward beam attack, so this is the one attack I actually have trouble dodging, and it's probably the main reason why I believe having a shield in this fight just makes me a lot more confident. But finally, we're gonna get into the final room. Of course, I mistimed a parry, and as you can see, that attack actually took me down to 50% health. So very, very tough fight. Collector is not joking around when he sucks out all my cells. But gonna do some parries. Again, not really expecting too much, I just want this thing to do parries, and I should be fine. Now, what do I think of the magic missile so far? I actually think it's pretty decent. It's definitely not S tier, but as you can see in this fight, I didn't get teleported to the Spike Ballroom, which already signals that it's pretty decent to begin with. But finally, Collector drops the blue Gatorade, I'm gonna drink it and finally end this fight. Gonna do one parry, yeah I know, just stop it and just die already. There we go, run is complete, and we refuse to get vaccinated once again, thus ending the run. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. I'm gonna go and record a bunch more footage for the other showcase runs that I'm going to do. There is a lot of content coming out in the coming weeks, so thank you all for watching and I'll see you next time.